The Golden State Warriors have had a crazy 2024 offseason so far, and I haven't really been able to make, as many videos about it as I have had in really the past 2 or 3 off seasons, but I want to recap all the things they've done so far and kind of give my take and analysis on what I think this means for them here going forward. So, the first thing that happened this offseason was Gary Payton II opted into his contract. This was pretty much expected, kind of at an injury-plagued year, and wasn't probably going to get, the $9 million amount in the free agent market, so he ended up opting in. So like I said, that is a $9 million player option for GP2, and we will see what happens with his contract here going forward, and if he stays with the Warriors beyond the 2025 season. And next, in kind of what I would say is a surprising move, the Warriors guaranteed Kevon Looney's contract. Before they guaranteed it, it was kind of rumored that the Warriors would decline it in order to relieve some, some salary cap space, get that money off their books, but they ended up accepting it. And I think it was because Looney was a very valuable mentor to Trayce Jackson-Davis last year, and I think you just need him in the locker room, right? He's just really a pro's pro, right? Like Steve Kerr loves having him in the locker room, of course Steph and Draymond do, and he's just been big for this team, and having that continuity with him still here, right? This is going to be his 10th year in the league and his 10th year with the Warriors, right? So pretty cool for Kevon Looney. Not many players can say they've spent 10 years with one franchise, so props to him. Now, does that mean he's going to stay with the Warriors long term? I don't know. I mean, I don't see them signing him to an $8 million per year contract unless he gets really significant minutes this year. But just with Trayce Jackson-Davis, breaking out onto the scene as the Warriors, probably what I would say franchise center as of right now, I don't really see Looney getting a long-term contract. But either way, he is here for the 2025 season, and I'm glad he's going to be back. Next, the Warriors actually traded their 52nd pick for Lindy Waters. He was a guy that was kind of in and out of the OKC's Thunder rotation, but he's kind of a really solid, 6'6", 3-and-D player, shot about 40% from 3 in the G League and with his time on the main roster as well. So he's a pretty solid pickup that adds some depth to the Warriors bench. Then the Warriors actually used cash to buy back their 52nd pick from the Portland Trail Blazers to select Quentin Post, and that hard capped the Warriors at the second apron, which, obviously that was kind of to be expected, right? The Warriors didn't want to go over that $189 million, basically cap level at the second apron. Honestly, though, pretty solid trade, right? Getting now Lindy Waters and Quentin Post for essentially that 52nd pick, that's pretty good. I would say Mike Dunleavy got pretty good value out of that 52nd pick, so props to him. That was a pretty good move. Next, however, the Warriors pushed back the CP3 guarantee date to July 1st in order to look for a trade, but they didn't end up finding any trade, so they ended up waiving Chris Paul outright. Now, I was surprised that they pushed back the guarantee date and that they didn't, just waive him to begin with, because the Warriors would be getting $30 million off their, salary books, right? And obviously, it makes sense for Mike Dunleavy to look for a trade, right, and to get some value back for Chris Paul. But at the end of the day, it just made more sense to waive him, right? Because like I said, you get that salary cap relief and you don't have to worry about that money in that contract anymore. And then Chris Paul ended up signing a 1-year, $11 million with the Spurs to pair with Victor Wembanyama. I mean, Chris Paul obviously had a good 2024 season with the Warriors, but it was clear, like I said, with that salary that he probably wasn't going to be part of the team going forward. And now, like I said, gets to have a pretty good opportunity to pair with Victor Wembanyama. So looking forward to seeing how that pans out for CP3. Then we got to go over kind of the Paul George and Klay Thompson, report timeline a little bit, because things got a little bit crazy. So in late June, it was reported that Klay is likely leaving the Warriors. Then after, it was reported that the Warriors were focused on trading for Paul George over re-signing Klay. And apparently that might have been, close to a done deal. I guess the Warriors had agreed to give George, a max 4-year extension upon the deal if the trade went through. And I guess Steph and Draymond signed off as well. But the Clippers didn't really agree to the trade, and it kind of makes sense, right? They probably didn't want to trade with, their division rival and a fellow contender. So I could see why the Clippers declined that. At the end of the day, though, that would have been a really good move for the Warriors. I mean, Steph, Paul George, and Draymond, I'd say they would have a pretty good shot at getting back to the finals if that PG trade went through. But this was also kind of the nail in the coffin for Klay leaving, because Klay at this point, I would say he was probably like, wow, the Warriors really aren't prioritizing me. I may have to go somewhere else. And this is when we were getting more of the reports that Klay is going to leave, that, he wanted to do a sign and trade with the Dubs. And then after that, obviously, it was reported that he signed with the Mavericks in a sign and trade. And originally, it was Josh Green going to Charlotte in the sign and trade, and the Warriors getting back 2 second-round picks and a $16 million trade exception. And basically, per Jake Fisher, if Thompson had returned to Golden State, he would have come off the bench and Podziemski would have started. And, Clay, I really don't see him wanting to come off the bench again, at least if he returned to the Warriors. And, now he's going to get a starting role with the Mavericks. And I think this will be a great opportunity for him. And then kind of another thing in the Clay trade, I guess the Lakers, offered Clay $20 million per year and proposed a D'Angelo Russell sign and trade with the Warriors. But the Warriors declined. Obviously, that would have been neat for Clay, to play for the team that his dad played on. But like I said, the Mavericks, though, are a pretty good team for him, and I think he's going to have a great season with them. Next, the Warriors pivoted. They signed Kyle Anderson in a sign and trade for 3 years, $27 million, and they also ended up signing DeAnthony Melton to a 1-year, $12 million deal. With that, the Warriors also hired Terry Stotts as a lead assistant to replace Kenny Atkinson, who is now going to be the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Warriors also hired Jerry Stackhouse as another assistant coach on their bench. But kind of the big move in all of this, the Warriors signed Buddy Hield in a sign and trade for 2 years, $21 million, with $18 million guaranteed in this contract, and the Warriors sent out a second-round pick. Now, this contract was kind of an interesting structure, something I haven't really seen much before. But with this sign and trade, this ended up turning to a 6-team mega sign and trade with Clay going to the Mavericks, and basically the Warriors getting Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield back in return for Clay. So honestly, pretty good deal for the Warriors, right? You get Kyle Anderson, who's kind of a do-it-all swingman forward, can guard pretty much all 5 positions, very smart, high IQ role player, one of the best role players in the NBA. Then you get Buddy Hield, who's probably the 3rd best shooter in the NBA behind Steph and Clay. So to replace Clay with Buddy Hield, I'd say it's a pretty good deal if you're the Warriors, and that was a pretty solid move by Mike Dunleavy. So this was all the Warriors' moves so far this offseason, but I would say they probably still need a center and some more size kind of at the forward or center positions behind, Kuminga, Wiggins, Trace, and Looney, and Kyle Anderson. But we will see, right? I think, the roster is pretty full out at this point. They have some two-way slots left. Not entirely sure if they have another standard spot left, but I would like to see Mike Dunleavy sign another center if possible. However, I think with, the Warriors offseason, right? The NBA is scared, and I know people throw out this term a lot. I've thrown out that word a lot, and, the sentence a lot that, the NBA is scared of the Warriors. But, look, Steph and Draymond are still in their contract. They have a lot of good young players, right? Podziemski, Jackson Davis, obviously Kuminga broke out last year. And all these guys that they just signed, right? Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton. You could use these guys and all the first-round picks you have to potentially trade for a star if one becomes available over the next year. Because I think, not signing, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, and DeAnthony Melton to long-term contracts, this is a strategic move by Mike Dunleavy. Because like I said, these guys will kind of all be expiring contracts within the next year or so, which means they make them more valuable to use in a trade for a superstar. So do I think the Warriors may end up pulling something like that off? We will see. Obviously, they've been rumored to get Lowry Markkanen, but I think this puts them in a prime position, not only, to continue developing the young guys who, like I said, have played pretty well for them so far, and I think will help keep this Warriors team competitive as Steph and Draymond ages, but they've also put themselves in a position from a financial standpoint to make a big trade if a star becomes available. So not only could they use, like I said, some of these expiring contracts with Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton, and Buddy Hield potentially in a year, but they can maybe use those guys in some first-round picks and still keep their young guys around whatever star they trade for. So, in my opinion, this is a great offseason for Mike Dunleavy. Now, ultimately, though, I would consider it kind of not the best offseason, even though it's been a good one because, losing 2 Hall of Famers in Chris Paul and Klay Thompson, that's never a good thing. But either way, Mike Dunleavy's been able to pivot very well and set the Warriors up financially in a very good way to still be able to go for a superstar if one becomes available. So, overall, very good offseason for the Warriors, and I think with their plan, right, of developing the young guys, Steph and Draymond still playing at, all-star levels, Draymond at all defensive levels, Steph at MVP level, with the young guys developing like they are, and then signing, like I said, really good role players with short-term contracts like Melton, Hield, and Anderson. This puts them in a position not only to stay competitive now, but maybe contend for a championship if a star becomes available. Now, I do think the Warriors championship window is closed as we know it. As far as, look, if they run the team, they have now going into next season, I don't think they're going to win a championship. I think that championship window is closed. But if they can use, if they can aggregate some of these contracts to trade for a superstar, I think that window has opened. But we also got to be realistic at the end of the day, right? This team is not a championship team as currently constructed. They will be competitive, right? They might get in the playoffs, but as far as contending for a championship, who knows? At the end of the day, though, if you give Steph and Draymond a chance, I think anything can happen. If you have Steph Curry, you always have a chance at competing for a championship. So I don't think we can say, the championship hopes are zero, but they're probably very limited, and the dynasty as we know it is probably over. But yeah, that's the Warriors offseason so far. Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis, they play in the USA Select team. They're playing in Summer League right now. They've been very fun to watch. So that's been the Warriors offseason. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.